The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called at the worst possible time. Ambassador Zethka of the Vorthan Empire stood before the massive holographic display, showing the latest casualty reports from the Outer Rim. Red markers indicated lost colonies, yellow showed systems under siege, and the growing black void represented sectors that had gone completely silent. The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections, Admiral Kresh of the Hegemony Defense Fleet announced, his 4 arms gesturing at the tactical display. The Devourers have consumed 17 inhabited systems in the past month alone. Our combined fleets cannot match their numbers or their feeding frenzy tactics. The council chamber buzzed with worried, chittering, melodic whistles of distress, and the deep rumbling sounds that passed for conversation among the various species. Representatives from over 40 different worlds sat in the curved amphitheater, each species having evolved under different stars, breathing different atmospheres, following different customs. But they all shared one thing now: fear. Counselor Prime Nexus, the ancient silicon-based entity that had overseen galactic peace for 3 centuries, spoke through its crystalline communication array. We have exhausted traditional military responses. The Devourers adapt to our tactics within days of engagement. They consume not just biological matter, but technology itself, growing stronger with each victory. The holographic display shifted to show footage from the latest battle at Kepler Station. Massive insectoid creatures the size of battleships swarmed over the defensive installations like ants over dropped food. Their acid spit dissolved hull plating in seconds, while their razor-sharp limbs tore through energy shields as if they were paper. Worst of all, they seemed to learn from each encounter, adapting their assault patterns in real time. "What about the military specialists from the Chronari Dominion?" asked the representative from the aquatic Mertal civilization, water sloshing in her environmental suit. "Their warrior caste has protected the northern spiral arms for millennia." General Thurek of the Chronari stepped forward, his massive frame dwarfing even the largest species in the chamber. Standing nearly 3 meters tall and covered in natural armor plating, the Chronari had evolved from apex predators and had served as the galaxy's primary military force for generations. His voice was like grinding stone when he spoke. "We have lost 60% of our warrior battalions. The Devourers do not fight with honor or follow any comprehensible strategy. They simply overwhelm through numbers and consume everything in their path. Our traditional battle formations are useless against creatures that attack from all directions simultaneously and show no fear of death." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The Chronari were legendary fighters, their military academies studied by strategists across the galaxy. If they were admitting defeat, the situation was truly hopeless. "There must be someone," insisted Ambassador Zethka. "Some species we haven't considered. What about the cybernetic races? The energy beings from the core systems?" "The synthetic collective lost an entire processing world last week," replied the Council's military advisor. "The energy beings cannot maintain cohesion in the presence of devourer bioelectric fields. We have run out of conventional options." The debate continued for hours, desperation creeping into every voice. Species after species was ruled out. Too small, too peaceful, too technologically dependent, or simply too few in number to make a difference. The Devourers required something that could match their relentless hunger for destruction with something equally implacable. Finally, an aide approached Counselor Prime Nexus with a data tablet. The ancient being processed the information for several moments before the chamber fell silent at a gesture from its communication array. "There is one species that our military database shows promise," the council leader announced. "They are from a relatively isolated system in the outer spiral arm. Classification: emerging spacefaring civilization. They call themselves humans." A collective rustle went through the chamber as delegates accessed their individual databases. Most came up with minimal information. The humans had only recently developed faster-than-light travel and had established a handful of colonies beyond their home system. "Respectfully, Counselor," General Thurek interjected, "these humans appear to be a young species with limited military experience. Their largest conflict involved less than 200 million casualties. How could they possibly succeed where seasoned warrior races have failed?" Counselor Prime Nexus projected a series of files into the center of the chamber. Military observers' reports, cultural studies, and psychological profiles filled the air in streams of data. Our anthropological teams have been studying human civilization for the past 50 of their years. The initial assessment was that they were a typical emerging species, tribal, territorial, but showing potential for galactic integration given time and proper guidance. The data streams coalesced into a detailed analysis. However, deeper investigation revealed several anomalies. Humans appear to be the only known sapient species that evolved not as apex predators, but as persistence hunters. They developed intelligence not to avoid conflict, but to pursue prey over impossible distances and through any terrain. Ambassador Zethka studied the floating holographs showing human history. Images of ancient hunters tracking massive beasts across frozen continents, of humans pursuing prey for days without rest, of elaborate traps and coordinated group tactics that brought down creatures many times their size. They also display an unusual psychological trait that our xenopsychologists initially classified as a defect. Counselor Prime Nexus continued. When faced with overwhelming odds or impossible challenges, instead of retreating or surrendering like most sapient species, humans become more aggressive and creative. Their military history shows a pattern of achieving victory through tactics that other species consider either brilliant or insane. The holographic display shifted to show human conflicts throughout their history. Small groups defeating massive armies through guerrilla warfare, soldiers holding positions against impossible odds, entire populations rising up against technologically superior occupying forces and eventually driving them out. Most significantly, the council leader continued, human military doctrine is not based on honorable combat or strategic positioning like most warrior races. It is based on the complete destruction of threats to their survival. They have a saying, the only good enemy is a dead enemy. Their warfare tends to be total rather than limited. General Thurrock examined the tactical data with professional interest. These guerrilla tactics might work against the Devourer's swarm behavior, but surely they lack the numbers to make a significant impact? Their entire military consists of perhaps 10 million active personnel across all branches. That brings us to the most relevant factor, Counselor Prime Nexus replied. The display showed human population centers, manufacturing capabilities, and resource distribution. While their standing military is small by galactic standards, humans have something that our projections suggest could be decisive. Every adult human is a potential soldier. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter as the implications became clear. Most civilized species had dedicated warrior castes or professional military classes that made up a tiny fraction of the total population. The idea that an entire species could be mobilized for warfare was almost incomprehensible. Their civilian education includes basic military training. Their entertainment media celebrates individual heroism against overwhelming odds. Their entire cultural mythology revolves around ordinary individuals rising to meet extraordinary challenges, the council leader explained. If we were to request military assistance, we would not be asking for a few million professional soldiers. We would potentially be asking for access to 8 billion humans. The holographic display now showed human industrial capacity being converted to military production during their global conflicts. Entire economies transformed in months from peaceful commerce to total war footing. Civilian factories producing weapons, civilian populations working around the clock to support military operations, civilian scientists developing new weapons technologies. 8 billion humans, whispered Ambassador Zethka. Even if only a fraction were suitable for military service, that could be hundreds of millions of soldiers. Soldiers who, General Thurrock noted with growing interest, evolved to hunt, not to fight pitched battles. Who developed tactics specifically designed to bring down larger, stronger prey through persistence and cunning. Who have a cultural history of refusing to surrender even when defeat seems certain. Counselor Prime Nexus allowed the data to sink in before continuing. The question before us is not whether humans could help us defeat the Devourers. Based on this analysis, they may be the only species in the galaxy naturally suited to fight this kind of enemy. The question is whether we are prepared for the consequences of unleashing 8 billion persistence hunters on a galactic scale. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated what they were considering. They had come looking for soldiers to defend their civilizations. Instead, they might be about to release something far more dangerous than the Devourers themselves. But, with red warning lights flashing as another system fell to the swarm, they were running out of both time and options. The vote would have to be taken soon. Admiral Kresh spoke for many when he said, "At this point, what choice do we have? We can face extinction from the Devourers, or we can gamble on humanity. At least with humans, we might survive." The debate that followed would determine not just the fate of the galaxy, but whether the other species were ready to discover what 8 billion human hunters could accomplish when given a galaxy-sized hunting ground and prey that left no survivors. 3 days after the Galactic Council's unanimous decision to contact humanity, Ambassador Zethka found himself standing on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. The blue and white marble looked deceptively peaceful from space, with no indication that it housed 8 billion potential weapons of war. Approaching Earth Orbital Traffic Control, announced the ship's navigation officer. "We're being hailed by something called the International Space Defense Network." The human voice that came through the communications array was crisp and professional. "Unknown vessel, you are entering restricted Earth space. State your origin and purpose immediately, or you will be escorted away by military vessels." Ambassador Zethka stepped forward to respond. Despite his diplomatic experience with dozens of species, his throat felt dry. "This is Ambassador Zethka of the Galactic Council aboard the vessel Harmony's Edge. We request permission to approach for official first contact protocols." The silence that followed lasted nearly a minute. When the human voice returned, it carried a different tone entirely. "Did you just say Galactic Council? As in aliens? Please confirm you are claiming to represent extraterrestrial civilizations." "That is correct. We come seeking diplomatic contact with your species' leadership regarding a matter of galactic security." Another pause. Then, a flurry of activity could be heard in the background before a new voice came on the channel. This one was older, with more authority. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Command. You will maintain current trajectory and prepare for escort. Do not deviate from the approach vector we are transmitting, or you will be fired upon." Within minutes, 6 sleek human fighters had taken position around their diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Zethka noted with professional interest that the human pilots were already running sensor sweeps and had weapons powered but not targeted. Cautious but not hostile. Intelligent. "Standard first contact protocols suggest we land at their primary governmental facility," suggested the ship's cultural advisor. "Our briefings indicate this would be a location called the United Nations headquarters." Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the comm again. "Negative on the UN landing. We're directing you to UDCOM headquarters in Colorado. This is a military matter until proven otherwise." Ambassador Zethka exchanged glances with his aide. Even in first contact, the humans were thinking in military terms. Perhaps the psychological profiles had been accurate after all. The landing at Cheyenne Mountain was unlike any first contact Ambassador Zethka had ever experienced. Instead of the usual ceremony and cultural exchanges, he found himself in a sterile military briefing room surrounded by grim-faced humans in uniform. Maps covered the walls, and multiple screens showed what appeared to be defensive positions around the planet. Admiral Chun was a compact woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She sat across from the ambassador with her hands folded, flanked by officers whose name tags identified them as representing different military branches and intelligence agencies. "Let's skip the pleasantries," Admiral Chun said without preamble. "You mentioned galactic security. That suggests there's a threat. Given that you've come to us specifically instead of just announcing your existence to the world, I'm going to assume this threat requires a military response." The directness was startling. Most species required elaborate diplomatic dances before discussing serious matters. Ambassador Zethka decided to match their approach. "You are correct. The galaxy faces an extinction-level threat from a species we call the Devourers. They consume biological matter and technology, growing stronger with each system they destroy. 17 inhabited worlds have been lost in the past month. The humans exchanged glances, but their expressions remained controlled. General Marcus Webb, whose uniform indicated special operations experience, leaned forward. What kind of resources are we talking about? What's their numbers, technology level, and attack patterns? Ambassador Zethka activated his holographic projector, filling the center of the room with tactical displays. The humans immediately began analyzing the data with a focus that impressed him. They weren't asking about cultural implications or diplomatic solutions. They were studying the enemy like hunters examining prey tracks. Their numbers appear endless, he explained. They reproduce rapidly by converting consumed biomass directly into new units. Each individual is the size of your largest military vehicles, with natural weapons that can penetrate most known defensive systems. They attack in coordinated swarms that show tactical learning capabilities. Colonel Lisa Rodriguez, identified as an intelligence analyst, looked up from her notes. You said they've defeated conventional galactic military forces. What kind of assets are we talking about? What makes them so effective against established militaries? The Chronari warrior caste, for example, has served as the galaxy's primary military force for millennia. They are natural fighters, larger and stronger than any human, with advanced technology and centuries of military tradition. The Devourers overwhelmed them through sheer numbers and unpredictable tactics. Admiral Chun studied the holographic battle footage with intense concentration. Show me the Chronari combat doctrine. The display shifted to show typical Chronari military formations, disciplined ranks, coordinated fire patterns, strategic positioning, and honorable one-on-one combat when formations broke down. Textbook military precision. I see the problem, General Webb said after a few minutes. They're fighting like a traditional military against what's essentially a biological weapon system. All their doctrine assumes the enemy will follow rational tactical principles. Exactly, Admiral Chen agreed. But these Devourers fight like a swarm of army ants. You can't defeat army ants with parade ground formations and honorable combat. You need exterminators. Ambassador Zethkov felt a chill at the casual way Admiral Chun discussed extermination. The Galactic Council has tried various approaches, including biological weapons and area denial systems. The Devourers adapt too quickly. Because you're trying to fight them, Colonel Rodriguez interjected. What if instead of fighting them, you hunted them? Made them the prey instead of the predator? The question revealed exactly the kind of thinking the psychological profiles had predicted. Where other species saw an overwhelming military threat, humans were already shifting to seeing prey that needed to be tracked and eliminated. Admiral Chun leaned back in her chair. Before we go any further, I need to understand something. Why come to us? According to your own data, we're a young species with limited space-based military assets. What makes you think we can handle something that defeated civilizations with thousands of years of military experience? Ambassador Zethka had prepared for this question, but actually saying the words still felt surreal. Because every other species in the galaxy evolved to avoid conflict when possible. You evolve to pursue it until the threat is eliminated. Most species fight to defend territory or resources. Humans fight to remove threats permanently. The room fell silent as the humans processed this assessment. Admiral Chen finally spoke. You're saying the galaxy's full of species that fight to win battles, but humans fight to end wars. More than that, Ambassador Zethka continued. Your military history shows a pattern of tactics that other species consider either brilliant or insane. When conventional approaches fail, humans become more creative and aggressive, not less. You have a saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. General Webb chuckled grimly. And you think we're crazy enough to take on galaxy-eating bugs because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Respectfully, General, the psychological profiles suggest that humans don't recognize the concept of beaten the same way other species do. When faced with extinction, other species prepare for honorable defeat or seek terms for survival. Humans prepare for total war. Admiral Chen stood and walked to one of the wall maps showing Earth's defensive installations. What kind of support would we have? This sounds like we'd be fighting the entire war yourselves while the rest of the galaxy watches from a safe distance. The Galactic Council would provide all possible technological and material support, faster-than-light transportation, advanced weapons systems, intelligence data, and access to strategic resources across multiple star systems. And command authority? Colonel Rodriguez asked. If we're doing the fighting, do we control how the fight happens? Ambassador Zethka hesitated. This was the part that worried the Galactic Council the most. The Council's understanding is that human military doctrine requires complete operational freedom to be effective. Yes, command authority would rest with human military leadership. The humans exchanged meaningful looks. Admiral Chun returned to her seat and steepled her fingers. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. The galaxy is being consumed by an enemy that adapts to conventional military tactics. You want to give humanity advanced technology, unlimited resources, and complete command authority to hunt down and exterminate this threat using whatever methods we deem necessary. That is essentially correct. Admiral Chen smiled, and Ambassador Zethka suddenly understood why the Council had been concerned about unleashing humanity. It wasn't the friendly diplomatic smile he was used to from peaceful species. It was the expression of a predator that had just been offered the perfect hunting ground. Gentlemen, ladies, Admiral Chen said to her staff, it looks like humanity just got invited to go hunting on a galactic scale. General Webb was already reaching for his communication device. I'll alert Special Operations Command. We're going to need our best hunters. Ambassador Zethka realized that in seeking soldiers to defend the galaxy, they had instead found something far more dangerous, a species that treated impossible odds as an invitation to hunt. 6 months after first contact, Captain Maria Santos crouched in the twisted remains of what had once been the Hegemony Defense Station Alpha, watching her prey through the scope of her modified plasma rifle. The Devourer Scout was massive, easily the size of a main battle tank, its chitinous armor gleaming black in the light of the dying star system. But Maria had learned to see past the intimidating size to the vulnerabilities underneath. The creature moved with the confidence of an apex predator that had never been hunted. Its bioelectric field sensors swept the debris field in regular patterns, searching for the metal signatures of fleeing ships or hiding defenders. It never occurred to the alien intelligence that something might be hunting it. Contact bearing 270, approximately 800 meters, Maria whispered into her throat mic, beginning approach. The voice that came back through her earpiece carried a slight accent from the Australian outback. Copy, Ghost Leader. Demon Pack is in position for flanking maneuver. We've got eyes on 3 more contacts moving through the station's lower decks. Sergeant Jack Mitchell had volunteered for the Human Hunter Corps after watching footage of the Devourers consuming the agricultural world where his sister had been serving with the Colonial Development Initiative. Like most of the volunteers, he wasn't looking for glory or following military tradition. He was here to make sure no more humans died because some alien bugs thought they could eat everything in the galaxy. Maria began her approach, moving through the zero-gravity environment with the fluid grace that came from 6 months of hunting in space. The galactic military advisors had tried to train humans in conventional space combat doctrine, but the Hunter Corps had quickly abandoned those lessons. Instead, they developed tactics that treated space stations and derelict ships like three-dimensional forests where humans could stalk their prey. The Devourer Scout paused at a junction, its sensors detecting something that didn't fit normal patterns. Maria froze, allowing her momentum to carry her behind a twisted support beam. The creature's head swiveled in her direction, compound eyes glittering with alien intelligence. For nearly a minute, Predator and Hunter waited in perfect stillness. The Devourer knew something was wrong but couldn't identify the threat. Its evolutionary programming had no reference for being stalked by something smaller and more patient than itself. Maria's breathing slowed to match the rhythm she had learned from her grandfather during hunting trips in the Montana wilderness. The same patience that had allowed humans to track mammoth across ice sheets now served her as she waited for the perfect moment. The alien's attention finally shifted away, and she continued her approach. The modified plasma rifle she carried was a fusion of human engineering and galactic technology. The basic energy weapon came from hegemony military stocks, but human weapons specialists had extensively modified it. The power output was increased beyond safe parameters. The targeting system was simplified for faster acquisition, and the entire weapon was designed to be fired, discarded, and replaced rather than maintained in the field. Galactic weapons are built for long-term campaigns and sustainable warfare, Colonel Rodriguez had explained during training. Human weapons are built to kill the enemy as quickly and efficiently as possible. We can always build more weapons. We can't replace dead humans. Maria reached optimal firing position just as the Devourer scout began to investigate what appeared to be abandoned equipment pods. The creature was completely focused on its investigation, presenting the perfect target. She lined up the shot, accounting for the creature's movement and the energy dispersion in vacuum, then squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt struck the Devourer at the junction of its head and thorax, the enhanced energy output punching through even its adaptive armor. The creature convulsed, bioelectric death signals flooding its nervous system, but Maria was already moving. Human hunting doctrine was simple: shoot, move, communicate. Ghost leader to demon pack, target down. Moving to secondary position. Copy, Ghost leader. Demon pack engaging targets 2 and 3. We've got company coming up the main corridor. The engagement that followed would have been recognizable to any human military historian. It was the same type of ambush warfare that had been used against superior enemies throughout human history, adapted for three-dimensional space combat. The Devourers found themselves fighting shadows that struck without warning and melted away before retaliation was possible. But what made the engagement truly human was what happened next. As more Devourers poured into the station to investigate the death of their scouts, they found not a retreating enemy, but an escalating series of traps and ambushes. Every corridor had been turned into a killing ground, every intersection mined with improvised explosives, every potential hiding spot booby-trapped with lethal surprises. The Devourers had evolved to pursue and overwhelm their prey through superior numbers and relentless assault. They had never faced prey that led them deeper into carefully prepared killing grounds with each advance. Ghost Leader, this is Overwatch. Thermal imaging shows approximately 40 contacts converging on your position. Recommend immediate extraction. Maria's response would have horrified traditional military commanders, but was exactly what Colonel Rodriguez expected from Hunter Corps personnel. Negative, Overwatch. We're not done here. Demon Pack, initiate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was a human innovation that had emerged from studying Devourer swarm behavior. Instead of attempting to engage superior numbers directly, human hunters would allow themselves to be surrounded, then trigger a cascade of prepositioned explosive charges that would collapse sections of whatever structure they were fighting in. The goal wasn't to win a pitched battle, but to eliminate as many enemies as possible in a single coordinated strike. The explosions that followed turned 3 decks of the space station into a debris field that crushed or scattered the pursuing Devourers. Maria and her team used the confusion to extract through predetermined routes, already moving toward their next hunting ground before the enemy could regroup. What they left behind was something the Devourers had never encountered before: fear. For the first time in their species' existence, they had become the hunted rather than the hunters. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display from the human Hunter Corps command ship Persistence, observing dozens of similar engagements across the Outer Rim systems. Red icons representing Devourer swarms were being systematically eliminated by small teams of human hunters who struck without warning and vanished before retaliation was possible. Status report, Colonel, she requested. Colonel Rodriguez looked up from her command console. 87 confirmed kills in the last 24 hours across all active hunting zones. Devourer advancement has slowed by 60% as they're now deploying scouts in larger groups and moving more cautiously through contested areas. Any losses on our side? 3 hunters Kia, 7 wounded. The wounded are all requesting return to active duty as soon as medical clears them. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. The casualty ratio was extraordinary by galactic standards, but each human loss hit the command staff hard. They weren't just statistics. They were volunteers who had chosen to hunt the galaxy's nightmares. The communications officer called out from her station. Admiral, incoming priority transmission from Galactic Council Command. The holographic projector activated, showing Counselor Prime Nexus in emergency session configuration. The ancient entity's crystalline structure showed signs of stress fractures that indicated extreme concern. Admiral Chun, we have received disturbing reports from our monitoring stations. Human forces appear to be engaging in tactics that violate accepted conventions of warfare. Use of improvised explosive devices, targeting of enemy wounded, and destruction of infrastructure are causing concern among Council members. Admiral Chin's expression hardened. With respect, Counselor, we didn't sign any galactic conventions of warfare. We signed an agreement to eliminate the Devourer threat using whatever methods we deemed necessary. That's exactly what we're doing. The concern is that human tactics appear designed not just to defeat the enemy, but to completely exterminate them. This goes beyond military necessity into what some species would classify as genocide. The bridge of the Persistence fell silent. Every human officer was listening to the exchange, and Admiral Chun could feel their attention focused on her response. Counselor, let me be very clear about something. The Devourers don't take prisoners. They don't accept surrender. They don't negotiate truces. They consume everything in their path and move on to the next target. The only way to stop a threat like that is to eliminate it completely. But, Admiral, surely there must be some possibility of coexistence or containment. Admiral Chun cut the transmission short by leaning forward and looking directly into the holographic projector. Counselor, you came to humanity because your traditional military forces failed. You came to us because we evolved to be hunters and persistence predators. You gave us advanced technology and unlimited authority to solve your problem. Well, this is how humans solve problems like this. Completely. The silence that followed was broken by another voice from the communications array. This one belonged to General Thurrock of the Chronari military. Admiral Chun, this is General Thurrock aboard the Honor's Edge. I want you to know that at least some of us understand what your people are doing out there. You're not just fighting to win battles. You're fighting to end the war forever. Admiral Chun straightened. Thank you, General. That's exactly right. When this is over, there won't be any Devourers left to threaten anyone ever again. Colonel Rodriguez approached with a new tactical update. Admiral, our deep space reconnaissance teams are reporting something interesting. The Devourers appear to be changing their behavior patterns. Instead of advancing on new systems, they're beginning to consolidate around their primary hive locations. They're scared, Admiral Chun realized. For the first time in their existence, they're acting like prey instead of predators. General Webb, monitoring from Special Operations Command, came online from another vessel. Admiral, request permission to initiate Phase 2 operations. If they're consolidating, we have an opportunity to hit their primary breeding facilities. Admiral Chin studied the tactical projections showing Devourer hive locations. Phase 2 meant taking the hunt directly to the enemy's strongholds, using human tactics to assault positions that conventional forces had declared impregnable. Permission granted, General. Signal all Hunter Corps units. The hunt continues. Across the galaxy, human hunters received their new orders and smiled the same predatory smile that Ambassador Zethka had first seen in that Colorado military briefing room. The galaxy had asked for soldiers to defend against an extinction threat. Instead, they had unleashed 8 billion humans who were about to teach the universe's apex predators what it meant to be hunted by something even more relentless than they were.